Welcome to Give It a Nudge. Today we have a great episode. It's not a piece of software. For a change, we have got some founders who are building something physical, not just physical, but something that's going to have a positive impact on the environment. So today we are with Genevo and we are going to be meeting Damon and Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Genevo.
Genevo. Did I still get it wrong?
You got it wrong, that's all right.
Yeah.
Most people do.
I practiced that how many times before we started the camera?
A few.
Genevo.
Correct.
I'm going to say it like 18 times throughout the show.
Do you want me to tell you again that it's a portmanteau?
This is why we should have auto cues.
Yeah.
All right, who's going to start? Let's start with you, Andrew. Tell me, how would you describe this business? What would be your way? If someone said to you, what is Genevo? Correct? What is Genevo? You would say?
It is... Damon, start.
Damon, why don't we start with you?
Tell
me, Genevo, elevator pitch. How would you describe it to someone who asked you?
So we're an electric boat company. We're aiming to be Australia's first recreational electric boat, luxury day boat.
And you're not making a singular one. You're making a model, so to speak, like a Model T, for example.
Correct. It's the E8 we call it because it's 8 metres, E8, electric 8. And we're very much aiming towards a sector of the market that's actually the fastest growing sector of the recreational boat market. Mm-hmm. Andrew and I have got a long background in electric technology, batteries, lithium batteries. So we've, very much sort of leveraging on that experience. Andrew started his career out in boat building. So it's a bit of a circle back, and for both of our careers, I guess I worked for a long time on boats and have been around boats all my life. But to answer your question, it's an electric recreational centre console day boat.
Okay, cool. And we'll come into both of your histories in a little bit. The market, I'm guessing Australia, and I don't know this. I do know that Sydney Harbour is the largest day hire market in the world, which still astounds me.
Yep.
But I would imagine in terms of the largest market of actual luxury boats would probably be the US, I would guess, just because of the sheer size of it. But we wouldn't be far behind, right?
We're way behind. Like the States is the big market.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But there's a lot of boat owners. If you look at Australia as an entire country, I would imagine, we all live on the coast, right, pretty much.
That's right. 85% of Australians live on the coast.
Yeah.
And Australia's got the highest boat usage rate in the world, I believe.
There you go. See, I knew there was a stat in there somewhere. Yeah. And 8 metres is an attainable boat.
That's right.
It's a boat that pretty much anyone could have.
And it's sort of at the upper end, but it can be it's trailerable.
It is trailerable?
It is trailerable.
Cool. And is that why you chose that size?
It is. We did we worked with a friend of ours who's a very well-experienced international boat broker to do a lot of sort of market research before we sort of landed on the E8.
Yeah.
And that sort of 6 to 8 metre centre console is the fastest growing segment.
Yeah.
So we're aiming at a sector of the market. Currently the electric boat market's worth about $7 billion US at the moment, and it's forecast to get to about 30 billion by 2030. So it's growing.
Significant.
Yeah, it's growing rapidly.
And the centre console, does that basically mean you've got a steering wheel in the middle as opposed to you're touching the back, or you've got a steering wheel on the right? Is that what you mean by that? So
you've got a console, which is like your roof canopy and all your cockpit effectively in the centre. A rib is a inflatable boat. Ours is a composite boat, but but ribs often have a centre console. So centre console is like an architecture, I guess. It's where the driving cockpit of the boat sits in the centre of the boat, and you can walk around it. It gives the boat a bit more sort of utility. You can use it as a fishing boat. You can use it as a tender. You can use it as a day boat. Diving. There's more freeboard around the driving part of the boat.
Cool. Well, before we sort of get into where you're at with it, let's talk about some of your histories. Andrew, I'm going to come to you now. Okay. So, you're a boat builder. That was how you started your career? Or
so I started my working life.
That's how you started your working life?
Yeah, yep. So, straight out of school.
And how did that happen? Because it's not, you must have been either had a family very into boats, or you just must have had a childhood dream.
I was really looking for a career that would give me the opportunity to travel.
Right. Okay.
and I fell on boat building.
Interesting.
I was advised that boat building is a very broad skill to have.
Is it? It doesn't seem like a broad skill to have.
Well, yeah.
Seems quite narrow to me.
Yeah, I got described by my father-in-law actually that he said, boat building, you're building curves, you're building.
True.
It's round. It's more complicated than building a house, and yeah, I got lucky and found myself an apprenticeship. It's one of the first places I walked into actually, up at Coomera, Zero Yachts. Funnily enough, 2 sheds down from where we're going to be building the E8.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And yeah, it was a great place to start my working career. I got to work on one of the Wild Oats 9, which was
amazing.
So we're talking back in 2001, and at the time it was very advanced in the manufacturing processes that they used. Pre-preg carbon fibre, we turned a whole factory into an oven to cook the hull.
Seriously.
So yeah, it was really good. But the reason I got out of it, I did it for nearly 2 years. I started getting a bit sick, getting sick more regularly than I used to, and I got advised that I had a low tolerance to chemicals, and it's a very chemical-rich environment.
Is that right?
A lot of dust, a lot of fumes.
I can see that. I mean, tell me, where do you start as an apprentice in? Because I mean, to me, it seems like an enormously like I can understand where a chippy starts. I can understand where a bricklayer starts. I can understand where most trades start. Where do you start in? Is it coffee? Is that what it is? Is it just getting the coffee?
You start at the worst spot.
Of course you do.
Picture up the front of the bow, underneath painting flow coat on. So hence
Right.
the chemicals. But
Yes.
I mean, they were good to us there. We had the masks and everything ventilated out. But yeah, you start very low, the boat building. Luckily, by the time we got to beginning the Wild Oats, I'd sort of my skills had grown a little bit. So yeah, I got to get out of the tiny little cabins and out into the sort of the bigger, wider part of the boat construction.
Cool. And then where did you go from there? Obviously, you've got your sickness, no chemicals, fair enough. So where do you go from boat building?
Yeah, well, so I went to electrical.
Yep.
After a little bit of finding myself, ended up on an electrical apprenticeship.
Maybe do we not touch on the finding myself?
There we go. Yeah,
Run out of
jobs here and there.
Yeah,
But yeah, ended up an electrical apprenticeship, working on rather large houses around in the Gold Coast.
Cool.
Which was really good. That was quite diverse in what I got to learn there. And then finishing that apprenticeship, I got what I was after, a trade that let me travel.
Yeah.
So
And off you went.
Off we went.
Found yourself again.
Sorry?
Found yourself again?
Found
Second
myself,
time round?
lost myself.
Rediscovered
found
yourself, maybe.
And when I came back, that's when I got into the renewable space. Solar and batteries.
Yeah.
Which is,
Is that how you two met? Through batteries?
Yeah.
Can't be many people who say we met through batteries.
No, and it was.
And there's a whole bunch of jokes we could go into, which we
love
won't.
batteries.
Cool.
And so how
A
did
big
you end up
battery.
in batteries before you two met? What were you up to?
I mean, after doing biochem at uni, I went overseas and worked on boats with my now wife, working on what they call big stink yachts, stink boats.
Yeah, it's a big power.
Yeah, big
Massive
power
power
boats in the
cruise.
States. And then we did a lot of working on sailing yachts as well through the Bahamas and Caribbean, and saw some amazing parts of the world. My family's actually, my uncle he's no longer with us, but he was a well-known boat builder down here in the Pittwater, John Griffin. And I remember as a kid going to his yards. I mean, way back then, originally they were timber boats he was building, but he worked on some of the big Apollos that did Sydney to Hobart and won some of the Sydney to Hobart. So I've always had this fascination with boats, and then grew up on boats, and that's, I guess, what led me to work on them in the States. And but after sort of that, came back and had a family, and did a few different things. I worked in real estate for a period there, which was a good experience for sales.
Dealing with people.
Dealing with people, learning the goods and bads of humans, but no. Then went back to uni and did project management and invested. Wanted to probably, sounds a bit idealistic, but I actually wanted to, having kids, 2 boys, I wanted to put my money and sort of invest into something that was going to do good to the world, and invested into a solar company. And through some contacts, we were the first to do a large-scale battery doing what's called demand charge management on an education campus up around Kingscliff, and engaged Andrew actually to do all the electrical work. And it was one of the first to happen in Australia. Went over to China and sourced the batteries, and
Okay, cool.
yeah, so that's how we met. And then since then we've sort of built a successful commercial solar company, but there's always been that sort of yearning to build a boat. I've always had the desire to build one. And
so you were in business before you started this business, so to
correct.
speak, and
so Andrew and I
still in business. Is that still going?
Yeah. So we've got a company that's over a decade old now and doing very well. And it's good. It pays the bills, but I guess there's always been that passion to build a boat. And so we thought about the technology. Going back probably about 5 years ago, I remember thinking, batteries have reached a point. It's really the energy density of energy density of batteries that's precluded them from, doing long ranges that you'll do in doing an ice boat.
Every time.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but even back 5 years ago when we bought these batteries over from China, that energy density of those batteries could have done it, and that's when we started to think, well, a motor's sufficient. Can motors be marinized? And so it was about 3 years ago that we engaged a naval architect, Misha Merzelikov, is a well-known, awarded naval architect up on the Gold Coast.
He works for you guys now, right?
Well, we engaged him. So, he's one of our team. So he designed the 8 based on our criteria, I guess. And there's been a lot of feedback with him on, the battery packs and how big they are and where they've got to fit and where the weight distribution, it's quite complex.
I imagine.
Even over the last 3 or 4 years since we've been working with him, things have changed.
Well, it's moving fast. Like all technology is moving fast.
It is.
And obviously, so we have a lot of AI people on this show. That's moving at a ridiculous pace. But the environmental stuff, you've got, whether it be electrical, whether it be hydrogen, all these kinds of things, it's becoming genuinely thought that that's the way everyone's going to go. There's absolutely zero choice. Whereas if you go back 5 years, there was still so much resistance against this, right?
It's
amazing how quick it's come.
It is. And it's funny, we're 2 country boys down in the big city, so we thought we've had a few hours to kill before coming on the show. So we went to the Maritime Museum.
Oh, yeah. Which
was interesting. So there's a sub there, I can't remember the name of it, but
I know the one.
Built in the 60s.
Yep.
And it's diesel electric. So it, when it goes underwater, it's running on a big battery bank that we had a look at. And then the big HMAS, whatever it's called, is also diesel electric. So the technology's actually been around
at the same time.
It's been around for a long time. Yeah. It's not new technology, but I guess now we've got better battery technology that enables us to, put it in small vessels like a recreational day boat, or, there's jet ski companies out there where they're actually, they offer a lot of benefit over ice boats where you've got to sit there and hear the horrible outboard running and the fumes going. And
it was a sliding doors moment, right? A bit like your VHS, Betamax. There's a whole bunch of these things. We could have ended up going electric rather than fuel. It's just they won out.
They did.
And then they completely smothered the other side of the business, right? Otherwise, it could have easily gone that way.
Totally.
It was absolutely ready to go at that time. I know.
Yeah.
Terrifying, isn't it? But that's the way it went. So I guess, how do your roles, or how long ago did you actually sort of start this format? Because I know you haven't built the actual boat yet.
No, we're close.
So how long ago did you actually form the business, like actually take the step, create the name, all that kind of stuff?
I think we worked at 2021 is when we engaged Misha to do the design.
So it's about 3 years ago now.
About 3 years ago.
And so what have you been doing? Like, you're obviously the boat builder and electrician. What have you been doing since you haven't built the physical boat? Are you in the design and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so definitely my boat building skills are not, they'll come into play a little bit here.
When it comes to painting a little.
Painting the flow coat up in the bow. But no, it's the electrical side of things.
Yeah.
So, and that's pretty much what we have been spending, or what I've been spending a lot of my time on, is just sourcing the products. It's not just buy one kit and it arrives. It's, buying components from here, components from there, making sure that they're compatible with one another, just basically virtually building it electrically, and it just evolving as the time goes on. As I said, working on it for 3 years in a space that's moving this fast, the gear that we started off with hasn't necessarily all made it to the final design.
Well, there's been some supply chain issues during those years as well, at the very least.
Yeah, that's
Big
right.
time. And
that's probably That's probably given birth to opportunities for other companies or countries that you might not have looked at previously because certain places it was impossible to get things from as well, right? So it's not just the components and products that have changed, it's the fact that I guess this opportunity has sprouted up places you might never have found before.
No.
But competition as well, not in the boat space, but it's all components that go into EVs. So trying to find these companies that are willing to sell, one unit for us to build a prototype, that's been part of the battle.
Yeah.
Probably more of a battle than actually physically designing it.
Yeah, what minimum 100 order kind of thing.
Well,
that concept, obviously.
Well, the EV market, like all of our components are coming from the EV market. And I guess it was our context going back when we went to China that really assisted in sourcing the batteries, but also then, contacts they had that were able to get the motor and all the other. From the outset, we wanted to absolutely make our own drivetrain. So there are plug-and-play drivetrains out there of varying.
Why?
That's a bigger. We see that as a bigger play, also.
Like a secondary revenue, right? You can buy the boat, but you can also buy other
and
drivetrains you can sell to.
That's right, and we've got interest currently from government water authorities up in Queensland and overseas that are interested purely in the drivetrain.
Cool.
There are a few out there, but having a bespoke drivetrain that can scale up and scale down in size and battery size is, it gives you a lot more flexibility into what boat it can go into.
So how do you build a drivetrain? Whose job was that? Because that sounds like it wasn't easy.
We actually haven't physically built the drivetrain. We're virtually building. The difficult part has been sourcing the batteries, the motor and all what's called the balancer system in between all of that. To divert slightly, electric drivetrains aren't that complex.
Right.
They're to compare an electric drivetrain to a ICE, internal combustion engine motor, internal combustion engines have about 150 times more moving parts. So electric drivetrains are somewhat simple. I guess they're more like computers and there's lots of software that goes in between those things that tell this thing to do that. And
so have you been writing your own software as well for that?
We will. We've engaged a CAN bus engineer that will be doing all that.
So tell me, I'm intrigued. It seems to me that the biggest problems you both had on both sides is getting the parts, right?
Yes.
Why can you not take parts from an ICE engine and just convert them over with a little tweaking? Why does that not work?
Well, Andrew's probably best to answer that. There's
electric motor or internal combustion engine, they're totally different.
I'm not an engineering person at all, just to be clear. Just in case everyone who's watching this is going, what an idiot. So but explain it to me, because I don't know anything about motor. I'm not particularly mechanical in my brain.
Yeah, okay. Well, I actually don't know too much about the internal combustion engines. I come from the...
Because you're an electrician.
That's right. Just the wrong generation to be fixing cars.
But they're very different, are they? I would have thought there would have been quite a lot of... obviously there's differences, but...
No, instead of having fuel running and pistons and things like that, you've just got coils and magnets, essentially. Different combinations that make the motor spin in the same way that the pistons were on a...
So they're very simple.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So, have you taken a lot of learnings from cars? Because there's obviously got to be a lot of R&D that has got into electric vehicles. Huge amount of money got into that.
Yeah.
And bikes, right, as well, like scooters and stuff, all that kind of stuff is huge. Have you sort of, I don't know, have you partnered up with anyone? Have you looked at, how do you get into their IP, I guess?
So we're buying, like a motor is a block, and then the battery is a separate system, and then there's lots of electronic DC-DC converters and systems that sit in between those, inverters and drivers. But they've all come out of the EV space.
Yeah.
The difficulty Andrew was talking about earlier is that, the tier one, which we're always adamant about, partnering with, tier one suppliers in the EV space, they're not interested unless, they're used to 20,000 units a year and numbers
because
like
cars,
that.
Basically.
That's right.
Everyone's given them massive orders. Why would they want to give you one?
But they can see that the marine sector's the next one to go, the next cab off the rank. And, we're able to obviously, establish good relationships, and they've got confidence in where we're going. So we've managed to get supply agreements from some very reputable battery and motor and
awesome.
But to answer your question as well, definitely a lot of snooping online, wire diagrams and things like that.
Careful what you say, there's cameras around there.
Tesla's very open about what they'll put out there, you know.
Yeah, they usually are.
Yeah. And whilst it's not exactly the same, we can definitely take some learnings from the evolution that they've.
And what about the exterior? Is there any difference in the design? I've seen obviously the pictures and the images, the virtual stuff you've got. It looks beautiful, right? And we'll put some links underneath so people to go and have it. Is there any difference in you have to think about in terms of the way it travels through the water? Is there any, or is that all the same?
The weight distribution.
Yeah, I guess
the batteries are heavy. Yeah, so they've got to be positioned in a way that one, they can be serviceable, but also be balanced on the boat for maximum efficiency.
I guess where I was going with it was, you build a drivetrain that you're obviously going to sell. Can you retrofit? Is where my brain was going. You
can, but it's harder, and that's why from the outset we built a boat.
Yeah,
we intend on building a boat because for that. The big problem is the battery pack. Like our battery pack's circa 800 kilos, so it's a big chunk of. It's not necessarily that big; they're just heavy.
Yeah.
But you've still got to put that somewhere, and in all of the retrofit sort of boats that we've seen, you're giving away a big space on the back deck, the aft deck. Usually they'll build some sort of enclosure out where the battery goes, which is a bit of a compromise. So
and they'd be really heavy. I'm just thinking now, I've done a little bit of flight boarding, and I've taken the batteries in and out of those things, and they're heavy, and they're like, that's a tiny board. So I would imagine the weight of these things,
you look at, they're deceivingly heavy.
Would it crane? Would it be like, how much heavier than an engine would it be? 3-4 times probably, if not more.
Well, an electric motor versus an ICE motor of the same horsepower or kilowatts.
But the battery.
The ICE motor is probably 3 times heavier. But the battery, the battery, I guess, is sort of like your fuel tank. But
just
petrol
just doesn't get lighter.
No, that's right.
Yeah. So you don't know how much you got left until the little thing goes down.
No.
The smarts on the screen tell you how much you got left though.
Yes.
And they're a lot more accurate than a fuel tank.
I have no doubt. Yeah. So where's your, we're here talking. I know that you're doing a capital raise.
Yes.
I know you recently got a grant, correct?
So we've got through the first round of the Industry Growth Program, the federal manufacturing grant. So
and was that difficult? Because grants can be, in my experience of grants, they're either an absolute nightmare or they're relatively simple. How did the government go on this?
Yeah, no, I put it in sort of halfway in between an absolute nightmare and very simple. It wasn't easy.
I feel you're being kind.
Yeah. We've applied for several grants in the past and got to certain points, but this, we really sit in that. It's all about innovation, and we're obviously at the forefront of electric boat manufacturing here in Australia. So, we're now in this advisory period where hopefully after that we'll have the opportunity to get some funding to get us into that next
and
phase.
your crowdfunding as well, right?
Correct.
So which to me makes complete sense because people love boats. Like I know a lot of friends. I like boats. I don't own a boat. I've noticed people that own boats, they don't like boats. They like live boats.
Yeah.
And everyone likes going on a boat. I probably like boats a bit more than that, but my friends, they're almost extreme to it. A bit like people with wind sports or cycling. God, people love cycling too. So I think when you're launching into a market, particularly a new market in terms of electric boats, to be able to give a lot of enthusiasts an opportunity to be part of that would be huge, I would think. So I don't know. I'll ask both of you this question. I'm going to start with you, Andrew, because I feel your answer will be longer. If I am a boat enthusiast watching this, and I'm sitting there on YouTube going, I want to get involved in this. Tell me what's in your words. What are your reasons that if you were that kind of individual thinking, I want to put some money into this, why would you do it?
Well, I guess essentially you could be a part of history. Here in Australia.
Answer. Yeah. You nailed that answer. You should just stop right there. No, please, go on, carry on.
But as we said, there's nobody else really doing this on the scale that we're proposing, and the market is huge, as I've already mentioned. The scalable drivetrain, has opened up a lot of opportunities. Especially as battery capacity gets better.
Yep.
Bigger boats. Can fit more batteries on, longer distance, everything like that. Yeah. We've got a really good team. We're really happy with our designer, Misha. He's been great all the way along. The boat builder, Dan Williams. And it feels like a really good team. We feel like we're really ready to do it. and any boat enthusiasts could come along and just bring their energy and their money, then yeah.
And what about you, Damon?
Yeah, I mean, as Andrew said, I think, I mean, you know, I'm a numbers guy, so we looked very closely at the start at where the market was, and the market's grown. You know, it's growing at 13% CAGR now, and I think that's
going to pick up.
I think it will. To me, it's an inevitability that we're going to see more and more electric boats like we see on the roads. I mean, we have to go that way because of climate change, but I think the benefits of an electric boat are, you know, far outweigh. If anyone's been on an electric boat, it's so much a nicer experience than being on
How could it not be? I mean, just the
it's like
serenity.
well, it's like sailing, but at speed.
Yeah.
And you know, you've got all that torque, so that it's a far nicer experience. And you know, we obviously there's going to be there's already increases in the emission standards here in Australia. Europe's probably about 5 to 10 years further down the track than us, but those things are going to become more front of mind, and policy is going to change towards it. The inevitability is, I guess, the big factor, but I think Australian manufacturing, Australia's recognised as one of the best boat builders in the world. We've, as we said, we've been developing this for about 3 years. Australian boat fraternity is quite a small.
I imagine it is.
Well, you know, everyone seems to know everyone, and we're very confident that we're further down the track than anyone else here in Australia in our development. And I think that just puts us in a really strong position to, you know, lever off our electrical experience, our, you know, proximity to Asian battery markets, which is where all the batteries are coming from. I mean, our play eventually is to hit the US market in sort of 2 to 3 years after we sort of get our training wheels here. But I mean, there's a big enough market here in Australia, but ultimately the US and Europe are where the big players are, and we've already had interest from Europe before getting a boat in the water.
Oh, that's surprising. I was going to say, I would have thought that the US would have been more progressive about it because the Europeans are so traditional. Around, you know, if I look at the boat scene, and we recruit for a few other boats in that world, in other companies in that world, nothing to like what you're doing, but they've struggled to battle against tradition in Europe because there is that obviously massive history of tradition around boating.
There is, but the UN, I mean, the UN's, not the EU, sorry, are pretty progressive with their emission standards.
That's true.
I mean, the interest we've had from, it's actually Portugal, is due to our, so we don't mention, but we've been working with UNSW. So, you know, getting back to Andrew's point, the reason he left the boating industry is that it can, particularly in the composite space, be a terribly dirty industry.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be done that way. There's a lot of new technologies, closed moulding, where those toxic chemicals and then using bioresins and different materials can make it.
All that is
well, that's
right?
yeah, I mean, definitely.
There's plenty
that's
of things like that.
Pretty horrible thing. But yeah, so one of the tenets that we came into it was, you know, it's one thing to build an electric boat, but we want to make sure that from cradle to grave that the manufacturing process is as clean as it can be.
Yeah.
So we've really looked at, you know, life cycle analysis, done some of the life cycle analysis, and we're working with UNSW on a recycled carbon fibre material that we're going to be integrating into the boat, which is, getting back to my point, was why we've had some interest from Europe, because they're really interested in that embedded energy that goes into producing something all the way through.
And what about the batteries? You know, there's been many a talk over the years, particularly when electric cars or particularly when hybrids first came out, around the batteries actually being worse in terms of the environment, in terms of the making of them and then disposure of them than the actual petrol. Now, a lot of that was just talk. But what's your take on that? Obviously, because you are talking about a powerful battery here, right? So in terms of the environmental impact, obviously no petrol in the water, all that kind of stuff, that's great. And the volumes, all those sorts of things. But what about the battery? Is it improving in terms of the way they're manufactured and disposed of or renewed or at the moment? Yeah,
so I mean, getting to your first question, lithium batteries are 99% recyclable.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the big issue was facilities to do it. There's not really any here in Australia. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very valuable stuff. I mean, our suppliers actually, part of our supply agreement is that they've got first dibs on shipping it back.
Right.
So they want the material back.
Yes.
Because it's still valuable.
Right.
getting to your further question, I guess what you're asking is the embedded energy in a battery and the mining. And so we're using lithium iron phosphate for the battery geeks out there. It's known as being the safest chemistry. The other chemistries that you see in phones and most other electric vehicles is NMC,
Right.
nickel, manganese, cobalt. So cobalt's got a bit of a bad name because a lot of the mining that's done for cobalt is in Africa and done under not so great circumstances.
Yep.
It's also a more volatile chemistry. So yeah, we've selected lithium iron phosphate for a variety of reasons, safety and ESG. But yeah, I mean, the embedded energy in a battery, I mean, there's lots of information out there for people to see, but it's, if we compared an ICE vehicle and an ICE vehicle and an EV, there's a bit of a ramp up at the start because you've got a higher embedded energy in the battery, but then it pays itself off in a couple of years.
Okay. And the fun stuff, like I've driven a Tesla, they're fast. I'm assuming it's the same. Is it just the sheer power? I mean, you mentioned torque earlier, but is it just going to be like wild? Are we talking sort of Red Bull style here? Is everyone going to be flying around?
I mean, yeah, it will be. The torque is similar to like an EV, but the silence, I think it's the silence as well that really tricks your brain into making it feel like
It's also the no
torque.
gear change. I think it's just a continuous, like you're so programmed, particularly at my age, to do, you just don't get that, right? And you kind of think, is this never going to end? Which is kind of exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm good for water skiing. Be much smoother in that respect, maybe. But I agree. I think, to be able to go out on a boat and have no noise, like you think about even when you cruise around slowly, when you're looking at things on, it's still, to just have silence will be, it'll be spooky, but I would imagine it's a much nicer environment, particularly if you're looking for wildlife or
And the
even
smell.
fishing as well. Surely for fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a fisherman. I can't stand the thought of fishing. Sorry, everyone. But I would imagine for them, this would be amazing because there's got to be a huge amount of noise underwater around an ice boat.
Yeah, absolutely. Diving. I mean, it's a far more pleasurable experience being on an electric boat than an ice boat.
And it's not the technology as well, the software part of it, it's endless with what you can do there. Like our first prototype, we're going to be just, getting it on the water and getting it going. But as far as like autonomous driving and mapping and watching out for sandbars, things like that, all that can be integrated in, and
Smart.
it is just, like I said, it is endless, and it will just, and that's part of, we'll own that IP. Once we get our software developed for our drivetrain, that becomes Genevo Marines, and then we will just continue to grow on that.
I mean, I can imagine that self-driving boats seems a lot safer than self-driving cars just because of the sheer volume of traffic out there. But the able to actually look under the water, which as much as you can have experience, you can't see everything. That is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, especially our waterways up around the coast, a lot of sandbars sort of popping up anywhere, water movement. And so, one day it might not be there and then the next day it's there. So to be able to have warnings on those sorts of things, it's going to make it a safer experience as well.
So when are we going to, I know when we first met, when did we first meet? 6 months ago, wasn't it? It was a while.
It was about 6 months ago, yeah. An old friend now.
Absolutely. I'm just waiting to get my first go in the boat.
Yeah,
but you were talking about maybe building a smaller version or maybe just going straight to the full prototype. Have you made a decision on that? Where are you up to?
No, we have. We're going straight to the E8. It's
good. That's it. All in.
Yeah, I mean, it's pointless. I mean, we've worked with batteries and motors enough to. It's
back yourselves.
Yeah, and we know there's a market. As I said, we've already had pretty strong interest in our media release that we did about sort of 6 months ago.
That's where I called you. I called
Yes,
you off
that's
the back
right.
of that media release because I thought this is an interesting story.
Yeah, and it was surprising. I mean, that, a bit of that interest came from overseas, which was bizarre because a lot of the media release was only local stuff. But I guess it's just to reflect. And
newsletters get sent everywhere.
Yeah. And I mean, our boat's a little bit different.
It's a cool photo that you had on that. I think I've seen more since then, but that very first media release, it catches your attention or something about the photo. The colour, I don't know what it was, but there was something that just tweaked.
That's why we want to build the full boat.
Yeah.
Because once we've got a prototype, it's going to be easy for people to fall in love with it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a great
It's going to be super easy. And you'll take it around the world, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the boat show here, we're aiming for the Skibs, which is a Century Cove International Boat Show up around our way on the Gold Coast next May. And that gets a lot of international guests there anyway. So
Well, lock me in when you head to the Monaco one.
okay.
I'm in.
Yeah, all right.
Maybe the year after. But
Yeah, maybe. So, how much are you looking to raise?
So we're about 1.2
Okay.
is what we sort of need realistically to get the first prototype.
That seems good for, a single build prototype. That seems
pretty
cheap.
I think it's the reality, we've crunched the numbers. We've got a very big spreadsheet that goes into minute electrical details of. So we've done it as sort of sharp as we can, but that's where we needed to be to get this boat in the water and get to boat shows. And then once people are aboard and those sort of sales inquiries that we're dealing with now, to get some sales behind us, I think it'll all just.
Well, if every boating enthusiast gave you $100, you'd be way oversubscribed. So
we would
I'm hoping that you do, because I am so keen to see this too.
come aboard.
I've got another company I met that are making. I've forgotten what it is now. We're going to film it. It's a hydrogen plane, which is I think all these things that we're exploring and that people are doing outside of being, it's just super interesting. And I'm looking for. They've got their engine. They built the engine. That's it. They haven't built the plane.
Yep.
So I'm not sure. I think there seems to be a lot of work to add to that. But I think that's going to be interesting too. But this, to me, it just makes so much sense. Like you said, just from an environmental point of view, a noise point of view, a convenience point of view, all those things. So the obvious question, which I held off to ask.
Right.
You're both running a solar business. Is it solar powered? Obviously it's not going to be 100% solar powered, but will you have solar panels on there that will give it a level of emergency charge or whatever, is that something I'm sure you have?
I'll let Andrew take that one.
Yeah. Well, we are, yes. So on the canopy, there's a solar panel.
If you had said so, I would be what?
And there's two parts to the battery system. There's your high voltage, which is powering your drivetrain, but then there's your extra low voltage, which is doing everything else, including a cooling system that runs the drivetrain. So it's very critical components. So the solar power will be feeding that extra low voltage system, and then any excess power will trickle up to the battery. So in terms of charging the battery, yes, it would do it, but no, you're not relying on it.
Could you get, like, if you broke down for whatever reason, in terms of a battery fault, not a mechanical fault, could you get it enough to get you somewhere, like even on a trickle speed? If it was sunny, I guess.
Very slowly.
Potentially.
Well, sunny is better than not at all, I guess.
You're proper shipwrecked and you're
Mind
out for weeks. Or
solar technology is also
it's improving.
Exploding as well, right?
It's sort of reaching a point where it's almost capping out.
So I should finally put them on the roof?
You should.
Definitely.
I've been waiting for the battery.
You should have done it 5 years ago. Maybe,
well, I know that.
Maybe paid off.
We can talk about something else.
I've moved since then, so it would have been a disaster. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. Yes.
And of course, we'll power radios and things like that as well, which is really important, right?
Correct.
If you do have an incident.
Yeah, that's right.
And the entertainment system, your music.
You can always watch Netflix.
Yeah, you can.
As long as Netflix is around, everything's fine.
That's right.
We can be out here for weeks.
But
we've got a nice big 16-inch screen and
even
a
better.
really nice Polk sound system. So
High def, 4K, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, nice chair.
But you will be able to charge it from solar from home. So part of, with our solar business that we do now, we also sell a lot of car chargers.
Yep.
Car chargers that will work directly from your residential solar system. And the boat's the same. You can plug it into that same car charger. Okay. So essentially you could power your boat, depending on how often you're using it, you could power it forever without having to pay for it.
That's awesome. Fuel's not cheap, right? Particularly when you're not going the speed this thing will go.
It's not getting cheaper.
No, it's definitely not getting cheaper. Amazing. Well, look, I'm so impressed with your continuous edging forwards. I think one of the things you see with a lot of startups that I don't love is when they just make giant leaps, they raise huge amounts of money, and I think it was too much. I think there's too many mistakes. I don't think there's any learnings. I think, and you haven't raised any money so far either, but you kept it going and keep going and chipping away. You learn so much. As you said, technology has probably progressed. It's probably decreased the cost of the boat, I would imagine, as things continue, or maybe not. But
a little bit, slightly.
Yeah, But to just keep that resilience to keep going, and to now be at a point where you can finally go, right, we actually only need 1.2 and we can have one in the water. That's amazing. So, well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
And thanks for coming down here all the way to Sydney.
Thanks for having us in your nice studio.
Thank you very much. Well, look, when you get in the water, we're coming up for
You've got
shore.
a ticket to ride, mate.
Yeah, there's no problem with that.
We'd love to bring it down to Sydney Harbour, and
Well, they wasn't the boat show just recently, the one in Darling Harbour?
there was.
Yeah.
It's not as big as the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast is the big show in Australia.
It used to be huge in Sydney, but it seems very small. I used to go when I first moved here, 25 years ago?
Yeah,
And it seemed really big, but now it looks a bit pathetic.
No, they've dropped the ball a bit. I think.
Yeah. Well, that's Darling Harbour, But so you can come down and just do donuts.
Do donuts.
Do donuts between the bridge and the Opera House. That'll make. We'll film it. We'll make a great video, and no one will hear us, so we can do it at night.
We've actually sat down and worked out a map and it's feasible with our range.
Yeah.
That we could port to port from Brisbane and stop in at every port
And make it all the way.
and make it all the way.
Well, so what's the range right now?
And we thought about. So it depends on how fast you're
Depends on
going,
how you're
obviously.
driving.
Yeah, but
If you're at the optimum speed.
so most Australians travel about 20 to 25 knots top speed, and at that we'll get sort of 30 to 40 nautical miles, which is about 4 or 5 times the average Australian boater does on a day out. Like most Australian boaters, the max they'll do is about 5 nautical miles.
Is that right?
So range is less of an issue with boats. I guess it's more, it could be a worse scenario if you ran out of battery out on the, out to sea. But, with our telemetry, the battery capacity is very clear where you're at. But the range is less of an issue.
Well, actually, you just made me think about one more question, which is electric cars don't need servicing. I'm assuming it's the same, right?
It's a lot less.
It's a lot cheaper, right?
Considerably less.
I mean, obviously you're going to have corrosion because you're in the water, but it would be significant. So not only could you charge it for free, you're not going to have to go through the expensive servicing costs.
No,
Right?
and part of our design is having remote monitoring of everything on the boat. So
So it tells you what needs
tells
to
what so that we can troubleshoot, and also for servicing and warranty claims and things like that.
You can upgrade things as
Upgrade.
the technology
Well, you
changes.
can upgrade it with overnight like they do with the cars, right? You can just do things very simply.
Yeah. New features
Over the air
come along,
updates.
we can do it over the air.
You can add Amazon Prime and Disney Plus. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Keep you entertained. There is plans for a tent as well off the front of the boat.
Off the front, how's that work?
bow? Oh, not off the front, sorry, from the bow up to the
So
canopy.
you'd still be wet, right?
No, when you're no,
You should
it's
be
like
tucked away,
So you can
quite
stay
a nice cabin,
overnight.
like a nice
Okay. I'm looking forward
That'll
to
be on our
seeing
website.
Well, you guys, you just need to start funding it so I can see it.
Please.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks,
I look
Dave.
forward to hopefully seeing this up and running in the next 12 months.
You will.
Thanks everyone for watching. What a fascinating story. If you want to be involved in that capital raise, there will be a link in the bottom. So please, and if you can't get that to work for whatever reason, reach out to us. But thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.